Hello, hello. I have with me Dr. Asheia Leonard. Thank you so much, Asheia, for being here.
Thank you, Megan, for having me. I'm excited about this.
Cool, me too. All right, so I'm gonna start out with a little bit of a fun slash interesting question. I for myself and a lot of my fellow pharmacy friends and classmates, we started out our pharmacy journeys thinking we were going to be doing something other than what we are actually doing right now. So I
Mhm.
would love to know, what did you think you were going to be doing career wise when you first started out in pharmacy?
Hmm. I think I definitely thought that I would be working with patients. And honestly, I thought that I would be running some holistic clinic that was this beautiful hybrid between traditional medications and non traditional medications. And we would have meditation rooms and we would have just all kinds of things. And then there would be like a pharmacy on the end of
That's a vibe. I like that idea.
it.
Okay, so how does that compare to what you are actually doing right now? Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do as a medical communication specialist currently.
Okay, so that has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. With what I'm doing right now. And I have been fortunate to have done a portion of that in running health and wellness clinics inside of pharmacies and in physicians' practices. And I would say that communication, with me learning how to effectively communicate with multiple audiences, with physicians, with other people on like a practice type of team, with patients, has absolutely helped me in medical communications, because that's what I do all day long
Mhm.
is communicate. And so I can see how all the pieces of the puzzle have come together for sure.
Yeah, so it seems like there was a gap between what you started out doing and what you thought you would ultimately do and what you're currently doing. So how did that A to B happen? Like what was the transition for you?
Yes. So I actually started doing a little bit of what I'm doing now while I was still working in community pharmacy. So because I was working, and I mostly worked in independent pharmacy in the retail space, so not like, a big box chain. But because of that, we had educational classes, we had all types of competitions, we would have educational sessions. And I ended up creating the PowerPoint presentations, or slide decks, as they're called in this part of the industry. For those, I ended up creating all of these collaborative practice agreements with physicians. And I really started creating standard operating procedures and all of this documentation for physicians and for clinics. And I realized that I had a passion for writing. I realized that I enjoyed that. Probably what I enjoyed the most of everything that I did was the communication aspect, was when I was
Mhm.
communicating both with medical professionals and with patients, and that I enjoyed that component the most. And as I started working with those physicians, I started to get requests from other healthcare professionals for me to help them with things, whether it was slide decks or other presentations, some of their marketing, if they had products or things that they were looking to promote in the community. They wanted a savvy way of saying certain things that would give that scientific component, but add some creativity. And so I realized, not only do I like this, but it seems that I'm really good at this. And
Mhm.
so that just really kind of formed its own path. I ended up working in medical information. So this was for a CRO, or a clinical research organization, which is like a separate organization that pharma companies will hire specifically centered around clinical research. And I started doing medical information. So being like an information source to answer questions regarding medications, vaccines, things like that. And got some writing experience in doing that and wanted to take a deeper dive. And so then I shifted over into specifically the medical communications space. And so that's how I got to where I am now. But it really all started in retail, just something that I was doing fun on the side that I realized I had a passion for.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think a really important takeaway from how you got that start for other people looking to transition or to move into some type of medical writing is you took advantage of opportunities that were present in the setting that you were in at the time. Like there are always opportunities to communicate in some fashion. It's not like you have to be doing a specific type of communication in order for it to count as some type of experience, or at least to use it to find out whether you actually like it or not. Like that's one important thing that I think it sounds like you were able to do is not only get practice doing it, but realize like, oh, this is something I actually enjoy doing. And this is something that I'm actually good at before jumping head first into that without like knowing whether this is something you actually enjoy doing. And then it seems like for you, medical information was kind of a gateway or a conduit to moving into different types of medical writing with where you are now being medical communications. And I think that's another important takeaway, especially for pharmacists who are medication experts. MedInfo is like a really, really nice place to be when you are
Yeah,
starting out, you're trying to figure it out. The barrier to entry is much more surmountable in MedInfo because you are well qualified, right, to be a drug information
absolutely.
or medical information specialist. So thank you for highlighting that. Now, for some people, medical communications and that entire industry might be a little bit less familiar. So, if you were, I don't know, like sitting at a pharmacy conference talking to some folks who are like, oh, you're a medical communication specialist, what do you do? How would you explain your work to that person?
Absolutely. So the medical communications or MedComms, which you may commonly hear it called, space is really a unique hybrid somewhat between medical writing and medical strategy. So what does that mean? So that means that pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, they are creating all of these therapies and they need to effectively communicate with the medical community the benefits of those therapies. They need to effectively communicate the results from clinical trials and the data that they have regarding how well something works, how safe it is. They need to effectively communicate through publications. So we know definitely as students, we spend a lot of time doing scientific research, literature searches, but somebody had to write all of those journal articles. And so, medical congresses and conferences, you have medical experts, physicians that specialize in particular areas, and they need to stay abreast of the latest and greatest things that are happening in order to be in the best position to help their patients. But the way that information is communicated is strategic. A medical communications expert is the one pulling the strings behind the curtain. Though you may see the physician standing there delivering the presentation, there was someone that had to put the presentation together. What is the most effective way to communicate this in order to bring the point across that the pharmaceutical company or biotech company wants to bring across, but also communicate it in an engaging way that's visually appealing, that is easy to understand. And so, what I believe medical communications experts do is we bring the science to life. We
Mhm.
simplify the complex in a way to where it can be easily understood and implemented for the medical community. And it really is everywhere. Once you realize what medical communications specialists do, then you think, oh my gosh, I've been exposed to their work this entire time, but I
Mhm.
had no idea that it was this group of people that were responsible for doing that. So we create all of the different deliverables, whether it's slide decks, whether it is, training materials for MSLs, medical science liaisons, training materials, whether it's that or whether it's just medical strategy, meaning this company says, I know I need to communicate something, but I'm not sure of the best way to do it. Can you help me brainstorm and think through what that should look like? And so it's both of those worlds coming together.
I love that. When I talk about medical communications, I usually talk about all the other types of medical writing first. And then I'm like, medical communications is like a little bit of everything, like sprinkle a little bit of all the other types
Yeah.
in the bucket, and that's MedComms. So this is actually a perfect example of a common misconception that I try to correct often. A lot of people, when thinking about medical writing careers, focus deeply on the writing. And that makes
Mhm.
sense because if you are trying to pursue some type of medical or health writing, it follows that you would need to have some skill in writing. However, what I try to inform people of is that it's not only about having the skill of writing. There are a lot of other skills that are going to be important to hone and to utilize depending on what types of medical or health writing you're talking about. So for you as someone who's in MedComms, you talked a lot about strategy. What are, I don't know, 2 to 3 characteristics or elements that you think are really important for someone to focus on developing in order to be successful in MedComms beyond the writing part?
Okay. So beyond the writing, and I would say that pharmacists and pharmacy students, so future pharmacists and present pharmacists, are primed for this skill set, and it is having a detailed eye, paying attention to detail. When you are communicating in the medical space, fact checking is so vitally important. We don't have the flexibility because it's so highly regulated of just making up things and putting it out there as fact. So we need to be able to do intensive research, look at data, look at it with a detailed eye, review that information. And so it does matter where the period is, where the decimal point is, all of those little small things that may seem minuscule really add up. So having an eye for detail is definitely a skill set. And that's something I would work on. Now, this may seem like a silly tip, but there is this game, and I can't think of the name of it now, but there's a game. I play games to train my eye for detail. So there's this game, and it's just on phone. I have an iPhone, but what happens is they dump like a truckload of stuffed animals and toys and everything. You see all these hundreds of things that are dumped into this space, and you have to go through and match the things that are the same in a certain amount of time. So it forces you to see through the trees and look specifically for something that you're focused in on. And so that's a way that perhaps somebody interested in this space can begin to practice that skill of fine tuning, being able to spot detailed things and to be able to do that quickly. So that's one skill. I would say the second skill that you really need is it's not completely necessary, but there is an advantage if you feel comfortable as a verbal communicator as well. So it goes beyond just written communication, but especially as you move more into the strategy space, you need to be able to effectively convey your point to the client. If you envision something looking a certain way or seeing something a certain way, you're going to be the one in order to communicate that point. And so you need to be able to build your confidence in expressing yourself and whatever that looks like. So whether it's practicing in the mirror, whether it's practicing in a group, I would definitely fine tune that skill of being able to verbally express yourself. And then the third skill I would say is And this may sound interesting, but I would look for ways to expand my creativity. And you sometimes you think, oh, you're in a scientific space. And so that means you need to be just really rigid and it's all about the numbers and it's all about the data. But the unique thing about MedComms is that you have to express and convey and communicate that data in a way that's interesting. And
Mhm.
so it takes creativity to be able to come up with clever ways to say something in a way that's going to capture someone's attention. So don't be afraid to venture into creative spaces, whether that means journaling, whether that means just spending time doing things that open up your mind, spending time in nature, spending time, whatever that looks like. Spend time opening your mind and just allow your thoughts to go down a certain path without trying to stop them, and spend more time doing that. It will open up your imagination in ways that you'd be surprised.
Yeah, man, she's giving y'all all the good tips. This is good. As you're talking, I'm thinking about how similar this work is to like my full-time work, which is really a blend of health communications and communication strategy.
Mhm.
And you're so right in that, you know, being able to see the forest and the trees is essential. Like you have to be able to drive the big picture. Like, what is the narrative? What is the
Yes.
purpose? Who is the audience? What are the goals? What are the objectives? How do we measure them? But then you also got to get detailed to make sure that whatever you're communicating is accurate, is effective, is resonating. Um, I love the I love the game that you share. I might need you to like check your phone after this so I can download it and share it with the group. But that was excellent. And then to the point about creativity, um, totally agree that like sometimes just getting out there and doing things that are fun, that are relaxing is one of the best ways to like open up your mind, especially when you're like deep in pharmacy work. It can be easy to have kind of tunnel vision around the provision of care, the dispensing of medications. But taking that time to just like let your mind relax and think about other stuff is so
Yes.
essential. And if you're a person who's like really into reading, and if that's something that can help inspire you to think differently. I love the book Big Magic. I can't think of the author right now, but if you Google Big
Mhm.
Magic, it'll come up. Also, Austin Kleon has a couple of books, one of which is Steal Like an Artist. And then I think there's a series as well, but I don't remember the names of the others.
Mhm.
But those are two really good ones that are about creativity and kind of it's like a nerdy approach to being more creative. You like read about
Mhm.
creativity, but if you're like me, that'll be
Which is
interesting for
perfect
you
for
too.
us because we're still
Exactly.
scientists, right?
Exactly. Okay, thank you so much for all this good stuff, Asheia. As we wind down, do you have any specific advice for students who are interested in medcoms?
Yes. So, one specific resource that I want to highlight, and it has become one of my most favorite resources ever, and that is Coursera. Coursera is an online platform that allows you to take classes from amazing universities all over the world for minimal cost, and you can really hone in on your skills. So there are all types of courses within Coursera that can really get you up to speed in industry world, everything from drug development and things like that. But they also have a course on scientific writing, or I think it's called Writing in the Sciences. And it's from Stanford. And not only does it help to sharpen your skills, but it looks really good on your resume or your CV as well. So I would recommend that for sure as a great starting point. There are a couple organizations. AMWA, which is the American Medical Writers Association, is an organization that I'm thinking about. They have all types of CEs, classes that you can participate in. There's a great networking forum where you can learn more information about what it takes to be in medical communications. If you specifically think that you're interested in publications, in particular. Then ISMAP, which is like the International Organization for Publications Professionals, um, is another resource that would be great in teaching you some different writing things. And I think, like Megan said before, don't get so caught up in the writing aspect of it that if you don't have that experience, you count yourself out, because there are a lot of even entry level positions where they will train you on how to effectively write. But the fact that you think in a detailed manner, you already know how to do in depth literature searches, is really going to help you. If you are a pharmacist or a future pharmacist, then you know how to effectively communicate. It's one of the skills that you have cultivated throughout your learning. And so you have the basic skills. Also, I would say, don't be afraid to start at a place like MedInfo. I think that when it comes to industry, period, number one, most people think of MSL and they don't think of anything else. Medical science liaison, and they don't think of anything else. The second thing is, people think if I don't work directly for a pharmaceutical company, then that's the only way that I can get in. Or
Mhm.
and so you spend so much time not getting closer to your goal because you really started at the end point. There's so many other ways, whether it's through CROs, like I talked about, clinical research organizations, whether it's medical communications agencies, which all of these companies, pharmaceutical companies, hire to do so many of the things that you see. And so it's a way for you to really get in, and it's a much easier entry point.
Mhm.
Plus, they're more likely to help train you and cultivate those skills that you need. And then you have the option to stay in that space if you want, or transition over to work directly for a company later. So don't get so caught up in, I've got to work directly for fill in the blank with a company that you're familiar with, that you negate all these other options.
So good. You actually answered all three of the final questions that I had in that one response. So that was perfect. And thank you so much for sharing all of those resources. I think it's really helpful for especially students to remember that there are organizations out there that are that have materials that will help you orient yourself towards in this direction if you're interested in medcoms or even other types of medical writing, as you kind of matriculate out of pharmacy. And while you're in school is a great time to get familiar with those organizations. If they have meetings, seminars, webinars, like whatever, really take advantage of those opportunities. Coursera is the GOAT, like forever, ever. Love Coursera. Also at Asheia, I don't know if we talked about this, but this year, I started developing programs specifically for pharmacy students, called
Mm,
Future Medical Writer School. So, for students who are interested in medical writing careers, that program helps open up professional pathways into medical and health writing through
oh,
educational
awesome.
programming. So, that's another resource that you can look into. And yeah, any closing thoughts, anything that you missed that you think fellow pharmacists or pharmacy students should know about MedComms or the work that you do?
I just want to say that I'm proud of whoever's watching this. I'm proud of you for being a part of this space, because you're already ahead of the curve. The fact
Mhm.
that you are just watching this episode, that you're a part of anything that Megan is doing, you are leap years ahead of so many people that don't even know this space exists. And so I'm proud of you for being open minded and exploring other ways, because you have to be an explorer to have come across this information and then say, I want to partake in what's being presented. So kudos to you. keep pushing, keep plugging along, stay curious. It's absolutely going to help you maximize this opportunity, the connections that you make. Keep asking those questions, and you'll get where you want to go, whether you stumble upon it like we did, or
Facts.
whether you take those intentional steps in order to get to a certain place. I'm confident that you'll land right where you're supposed to be.
Such a beautiful message, and kudos to you, Asheia, because it's because of people like you who are willing to be vocal about the work that you do and help educate peers on that work and what it entails and how it can be exciting and useful and what things to do to go in those directions. It's people like you who show up and provide that information that is usually not freely given to us or openly given to us. So I really appreciate you willing to chat with the community. And please make sure that you follow Asheia on LinkedIn. She's pretty active on there. So if you're interested in learning more about MedComms or Asheia's work, I think you can find her at Asheia Leonard on LinkedIn. Is that right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.